This is A Silent War Within, the podcast dedicated to confronting the unseen mental health battles carried by our first responder and healthcare heroes. This show is about real stories, real struggles, and real ways to survive the storm and come out stronger on the other side. For too long, stigma has kept you silent, but this is your space to bravely break that silence, share vital insights, and build a community where your well-being truly comes first, because your service deserves unwavering support.
Welcome, everybody, to A Silent War Within. We're happy to have you here today. Unfortunately, our co-host, Kim, she had a bit of bad luck, and her husband cut her internet line, so she will not be joining us today. But I do want to introduce you to our very special guest host. This is Catherine Payton. You may know her as RadTech Catherine on TikTok. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. We love her stuff here. We've watched probably every video you have, so
Thank you.
we're super excited to have you. Just a few little business items for you guys. We are streaming on all platforms now: Apple Music, Amazon, Spotify, all the places you generally get podcasts at. We're streaming on all those places. We're getting really good numbers. You guys are giving us great feedback. We love it. We're on TikTok at A Silent War Within, and we're getting good feedback from that, good engagement from that. Need some more followers. So if you guys want to go and follow that page, you always can. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You can watch our episodes on YouTube. And just to do that, you just search The Silent War Within and it will come right up. But we appreciate all the support that we have been getting. So Catherine, tell us a little bit about how you came to this RadTech journey, because RadTech's kind of, and for those of you who don't recognize that lingo, that's radiology technician, right?
Correct. Technologist. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, technologist. Okay.
Uh-huh. I
don't really know what they do, so demystify RadTech for us.
Sure, absolutely. I did not have any inkling of what that meant to be a radiology technologist when I was growing up. I always was interested in medicine, and I became a single mom at the age of 28. And so I had gone to my high school reunion and someone said, "Hey, you should look into being a radiology tech. They make decent money. It's healthcare." And so I started researching the field and absolutely fell in love with it. I did some observation in a hospital and was like, "Oh my gosh, that could be my job. That is so cool." And so, yeah, I went for it. Applied back to school, was a single mom, busted my butt in school and put myself through college. And it's been a great, very rewarding career. It's definitely maybe some outside forces that made me find this career, because it's been great.
So did you have a job previous to RadTech, or was that your right out of high school into college
Yeah, no.
career path?
I started out as a secretary. So I was the administrative assistant for a wildlife veterinarian for the Fish and Game. And I don't know if you know anything about working for the state, but they don't make great money.
They do not pay well. You're right.
Yeah, you got to do it for the love of the job. And I just needed something that I could support myself financially as a single mom. So It's been great.
Cool. Well, it seems like you've done pretty well. At what point during this career journey did you feel like, okay, now it's time to kind of pull back the curtain, if you will, and kind of show people what radiology technologists really have to deal with on the backside of things? Because your TikTok and your social medias have really done extremely well, and you tell some pretty gut-wrenching stories from time to time about things you've seen, and we'll get into that. But tell us, was it there a moment or something that you realized, like, I need to share this with people?
Well, I think for me, it was seeing a lot of glamorization of the career, which it can be very rewarding and fascinating, but there's a lot of young creators, and nothing against them, but they just kind of glamorize, "Oh, I've got these cute bags and these cute Stanley cups." And you're going to get there and you're going to find out that it's not all cute scrubs going and working in the hospital in a trauma bay. There's some really challenging things that we deal with. And if I had known that up front, it probably wouldn't have changed my career trajectory, but it would have at least allowed me to go, "Oh, wow, okay, there's a little bit more to this than I realized."
So is that kind of what you hope to achieve by starting the social media push, is to demystify it, or, remove some of that glamour?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Just educating people on what it's like to get through school, obviously, and then it's not glamorous all the time. We're in trauma bays, and
Yeah.
We see some pretty hard things, and you could be really surprised by that if you didn't know anything about healthcare and you decided to go to college and you pay for all these years of school and get there and go, oh, shoot, I don't know that I can cope with this.
Do you find that there's a large portion of people that are doing it that way that come right out of high school, maybe junior college, and go right into radiology tech and kind of are not prepared for it? Or do you find more of maybe like you, where you kind of seem like, at least without digging too deep into it, you seem like you're pretty prepared for what you were walking into, at least?
I feel like most people don't know what they're getting into, honestly. And I didn't feel like I was prepared for it either. Um, the few hours that I observed in a radiology department, in the backside of things in the department, didn't really prepare me for being in a trauma bay or some of the hard things that we deal with. And so maybe that was just kind of my goal is like, I wish somebody had maybe told me up front.
And that's one of the things I think I was most surprised over from working on an ambulance my entire career up until about 8 years ago. I didn't, I don't guess I realized what radiology technologists did, because what wound up happening is I had broken some bones. I was a typical boy in the South, so we just naturally break bones. And I was all boy. My mom likes to continuously remind me of that even today, that I was all boy and still am. So I've broken my fair share of bones. And so my interaction with the radiology tech was them just going back, shooting the x-ray picture. That's it. So when I got into a hospital system, I really realized that they come to the trauma activations. They come to the bedside of these patients and take x-rays. And last year, 2 years ago, I had a really bad four-wheeler accident that could have very well killed me. Luckily, it just separated my shoulder and did some shoulder damage that I had to have surgery for. But the radiology tech at that particular little local hospital was the kindest, sweetest, nicest, most welcoming person there. Everybody else was giving me grief about not wearing a seatbelt in a side by side and everything else, but they were just so kind. So that really resonated with me. And I think that you can see that kind of evolve, that message kind of evolved from day one, you starting to make videos, because yes, we went all the way back. Um, so we do research our guests here.
Right.
And you see that kind of message start to evolve. Really, it starts out about radiology, technology and the education and what it takes to get there. But then it kind of at some point takes a little bit of a morph, and you start talking about some of the difficult things that you see, and kind of preparing those that may have started to watch your videos for the educational purpose. Of course, you start to kind of scatter in some of that information, planting those seeds of like, this is not exactly what you think it is. So how do you think that you've evolved over time? That's my word saying how you've evolved, but how do you think you've evolved over the first video that you started making to now?
Think part of, I'm still kind of new to social media. I've only been doing this really focused on it for the last 6 months. And I think what people like is a human connection. They want to see
Absolutely.
it, they want to see your real raw emotions. And they want it to feel like a FaceTime, right? When you're on a TikTok. And so I just started pouring my guts out, and I batch film all of my content when I'm at work. I'll just film for 30 minutes and have, 6 or 7 videos. And so that's kind of just how it evolved, is just really starting to share my truth, my human spirit. Like I really connect with patients on an emotional level, and maybe more so than other technologists have. And I do want people to see that you can make an impact on somebody's life being a radiology tech.
Yeah, I really believe that you can make an impact on anybody's life from any front, and especially healthcare, because we see people on some of their worst days. And when we show our humanity, it really means something to the patient. It meant something to me as a patient to have people show me their humanity versus judging the situation just at its core.
Right. And when you start out in a bigger hospital or a larger, level one trauma center, sometimes you're moving through your day so quickly that you don't have the time to have those patient interactions. But it really only takes a minute or two
It
to make a
does.
difference to somebody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's free to be kind.
It is free to be kind.
And that really over the last 6 months has impacted us excuse me, with starting the show and getting to interview different people. That's one of the kind of umbrellaing topics that we've discussed almost every show, that most of the really good content creators that we're pulling from TikTok and the mental health professionals that we're also pulling from TikTok and numerous other avenues that we have literally said kindness, humanity, the same things you just said. So that has really been the overreaching topic of almost every episode. We try not to get too deep into it every episode because then it would get kind of boring, I feel like. But
Yeah.
everybody has at very minimally mentioned it and talked about how it has affected their practice with their patients. So I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
One of the things that I really liked in one of your video was you shared something that when you were sharing it and the situation you were sharing it about was difficult to hear about. And you said, the only way I've learned to cope with these tragedies is to remind myself. So what are some of the things that you're reminding yourself of when you're going through these tragedies, when you're watching these? I'm sure you see peds, adults, and all different kind of walks of life as well. So how do you deal with that? How do you cope with that on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, well, in the moment, I have learned to say I know that a trauma is coming in or a trauma activation is happening. I have learned to really take a deep breath, calm my mind, calm my spirit before I go into that room. I'm trained to do this. I'm going to be there, be hyper focused, and do what I'm trained to do. After the fact, I have learned to, number one, debrief with my coworkers. That's always important. That tragedy isn't necessarily mine to carry, right? That was something that happened to somebody else, and I'm thankful to God that I was there to help take care of that patient that day, but that burden of that pain and sorrow isn't mine to carry forever.
That's right. Yeah, one of our guests that we had on, Dr. Reverend Sarita Wilson Anderson, that works here at the same hospital that we do, her interview turned into a therapy session for Kim and I more so than it did an interview because she's spiritual director. So she has a lot of, a lot of information to share and a lot of life, to share with us, a lot of life experiences through her journey to there and taking care of these families and patients that we deal with on a daily. And that's one of the things that she mentioned very heavily throughout the whole conversation. This is not yours to bear. Don't get so caught up in what's happening to them that you make it your own. And I think we suffer from something called transferred grief. And it's something that we've talked about on the show and we'll continue to talk about. We chronically, as providers, whether it's healthcare, whether it's EMS, whether it's fire, whether it's police, whatever title that you wear, we chronically take that happened to that kid or that adult or that patient, just whoever we're taking care of. We chronically take that on ourselves and we grieve about it. We have a grieving process for it. And I think it's really important that we definitely remind ourselves from time to time, this is not your grief. This did not happen to you, and grieve for those that it did, but it's not ours to carry. But do you have any stories that you feel like could be impactful to some of our listeners?
Yeah, I have shared this a little bit on one of my TikToks, but I was a brand new baby tech. I was maybe 6 months out of school and I was working a level 1 trauma center, and they brought this kid in who had been in a gas station fire. And oh my gosh, I mean, it was it was awful for everybody.
Yeah, that's so bad.
And we had the same nurse that was working with me. I continued to work with her for over 15 years after that. But what happens in radiology is you'll take that picture, and then if that patient goes to another hospital, you never know anything. Obviously, that happens in a lot of times in healthcare, but you never know what happens to that patient later.
Right.
I've shared this in one of my videos, but I was working a night shift in a different hospital, and I was working as a CT tech, and I was bringing my patient into my room, and I used to back my gurneys in. It was just easier for me, and this patient's gown was opened, and they had burns all over their back. And I said, "Hey, how did you get those burns?" And the patient tells me, "I was in a gas station fire when I was a kid." And I said, I was there that day. And I mean, we sobbed in it. It was a total God moment. I feel like he
Yeah,
needed that.
absolutely.
And I needed because that was one of the worst things I ever experienced, and have it etched in my mind like that. And then to have it come full circle for him, which he was like, "Thank you for saving my life." And I said, "I just took a chest x-ray. I don't really feel qualified to accept that, but I do know the nurse still, and I'll be sure to thank her." And wow, it was really an impactful moment for me. And just like seeing like, oh, I made a difference for that guy.
Wow. And that still makes you emotional. How many years ago was
It
that?
does. 18 years ago.
And that's the whole point of this. We still carry some of those burdens with us for years and years. I've got the same kind of stories, and it's so refreshing to have people on here almost every single week since we started this, that even years after some of these calls and patients that we talk about, that they still can get emotional about that. They still carry some of that burden. That is so beautiful that you are still attached to that. So thank you so much for that genuine response to that. That almost makes me want to cry. I'm not going to do it, but
Yeah.
I
It was really special though to get that
yes,
full
yes.
circle moment. Like I just was really thankful for that.
And do not, under any circumstance, I tell everybody this that I have contact with, don't lessen your role in saving that kid's life, or saving that. Was he an adult or a kid when it happened? It was a kid,
It was
right?
a
It was
kid.
a kid. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't lessen your role in that, because to them, one of the calls that I can remember very vividly is the first time I had to be in a car with somebody while they were getting cut out with the jaws. And it's loud, it's obnoxious, it's scary. And it was this little girl. She was probably 6 or 7. And I just got right down to her and I just talked to her real soft and told her everything was going to be okay. And that's all I did for her. That is it. I'm walking through Walmart a few years later, and this 14-year-old runs up and says, "Hey, do you remember me?" And I was like, "No, not really." Kids change. And that was not something that, because I didn't do anything heroic, if you will, but it wasn't something that just stuck with me. And she wasn't hurt, so
Mhm.
it didn't resonate with me that way to hang on to. Well, when I saw her, she explained to me who she was. And I had the same response. I burst out into tears because she remembered me being in that car with her and just comforting her. She said, "You saved my life." I said, "No, I didn't." And she said, "But to me, you did. Whether you did anything to do it, you did." And it was then that I kind of adopted that mentality, as my work matters, no matter how small it may be. Because as a paramedic, you may have 5 minutes with a patient, but that 5 minutes may mean the world to them. And it's a laughable thing, but when I would train new paramedics, I would tell them, you can be the worst paramedic on the planet. You could be the worst IV starter. You could do all the things wrong, but if you are nice to somebody and you make them feel like they are important to you, that will mean more to them than any medical procedure you'll ever provide for them. So don't lessen what you did in that
Thank you.
case, because that is awesome work for him to remember, that whole team that took care of him that day. So
Yeah,
definitely
thank
don't
you.
lessen your involvement in that. That's awesome.
The other thing I think I learned from sharing that story was, someone pointed out if I hadn't talked to that patient that day and said, hey, just being genuinely like starting a conversation with somebody, I would have never known that that was the same patient. And so it's really, you can make an impact in people just by being kind and having a
Being kind. That's
conversation with
right.
them.
That's
And
right.
those 5 minutes that I spent with him changed the trajectory of that outcome for him later on too. It's really cool.
So after that story, do you have any ways that you deal with those images that may stay behind and lurk up in your dreams sometimes? Because I think we all have them. If you're in healthcare, we've all seen something that's generally horrible. And we try not to focus, even though Kim and I are from two different worlds. Kim's an RT and has been an RT. She's on a transport team now, and I've been on the same transport team for 10 years now. But my background is really, well, it's almost even now. But my background before now has always been EMS. So we come from very different worlds. And we try not to focus on too much of the first responder aspect of it, because we're technically healthcare workers now, being on a transport team for our hospital. And I think we've all seen something really difficult. We've all seen something that we might not can erase from our minds. So do you have any mechanisms that you use, or coping mechanisms that you use, that maybe help you when those images start to lurk back up? Because they always come at the most inopportune times for me.
Yeah. I think what has really helped me is I have really worked the last 5 years on my own mental health. So I really did struggle with my own mental health. And I think there's something about maybe a childhood trauma or something that leads us into healthcare in the first place. So we are not always having the best of having coping mechanisms as adults when we start out our careers in healthcare. And so really learning, I need to be out in nature. I need to have hobbies that are interesting to me and something on the calendar that I look forward to. In the moment, I've really learned to just, calm my mind, say, just let it go in the past and move out of that. But we definitely don't always start out with the best coping mechanisms as healthcare workers. And
That's
so
right.
I've really focused since the pandemic for sure.
Yeah. That was hard on
Yeah.
all of healthcare,
Yeah.
especially I'm sure you guys, because you were, every COVID patient had to have imaging numerous
Every
times
patient.
throughout their stay at the hospital. I mean, sometimes it was daily. We had a patient here that it was every 3 hours that they were getting some kind of new imaging because they were so bad. And we were just watching, and just waiting for something to turn the tide. Luckily, something finally did, and they made full recovery, which was phenomenal. And there are those stories like that out there everywhere. We just tend to focus on the bad of the pandemic more so than the good. But there was really good medical practice that took place during the pandemic. Some of it was when we were reusing the same mask over and over for 5 or 6 days in a row. Yeah, that's pretty bad. But
Yeah.
there was some good treatment that actually happened in that I think we could focus heavier on. So you brought up something. I want to see if you'll dig into it with me. So it's going to be one of those personal notes. It's not on on the episode guide. It's just something that you hit on that I want to see if you're like all our other guests and like me. So what we found from doing this, and we've been surprised by it, is that everybody that we've interviewed so far, and this is episode 7 or 8, so we're ahead. We like to, be ahead of the episodes. So if
Mhm.
somebody has to cancel or we have to cancel, but I think one of the things we've started to notice is that everybody we've interviewed has got some kind of traumatic event, usually early in their life, either teenage years or childhood years, that kind of drove them to want to be something for somebody that they didn't have. So do you fall in that category, or is it just that you were interested in it?
No, absolutely. I had a very traumatic childhood, and that made gave me a tender heart, I feel like, for people because I craved what I didn't have, right? And so I was always interested in medicine. My whole goal in high school was to become a doctor, which I didn't do because life
And it's expensive.
is very expensive. Yeah. And I didn't have parents that were guiding me and helping me go to college or say, this is what you should do as a career path. So yeah, I had to kind of figure that out on my own. But yeah, I definitely feel like the things that I craved turned me into somebody that wanted to give that to other people.
I know we mentioned it earlier, but do you feel like throughout that journey from traumatic childhood to now, do you feel like you experienced, especially when you first got into the field and kind of, because we all have that season of kind of working our way through and finding our own path and kind of what we're going to do and what kind of provider we're going to be. Everybody kind of has that adjustment period. In the healthcare system, we certainly hope that it happens in your orientation and you're pretty set when you get out, but that's not reality. A lot of times it takes a few years for us to make some mistakes and kind of figure things out. Do you feel like through that time that you experienced that transferred guilt that we talked about a little earlier and that you kind of carried throughout and it kind of drove you to be the provider you are today?
I think so. And I have a kind of a unique situation because I allowed my maybe childhood trauma, PTSD from work, stresses of life to really escalate to a point where I was coping in really unhealthy ways. I struggled with addiction and I ended up having to go to rehab. I'll be honest with you. And it changed the trajectory of my life. Thank goodness for that. But I allowed that to continue and was so secretive about it because it's so shameful as a healthcare worker. Why are my coworkers fine and I can't get it together? What's different about me that makes me, I mean, there was one point directly in my career, and I remember it very vividly, where I was sitting in a control room with other technologists and we were talking about something that had happened. And I felt more of what had happened than anybody else in that room. And I realized, oh, I'm actually made different. I actually either care more or empathize more than other people. And so not everybody's going to care about this situation the same way that I am going to. And so learning how to maybe, not let that grief transfer to me, taking care of my own mental health needs and really getting ahead of that to where I'm healthy and happy today has just evolved me into where I can share on social media about
Yeah.
loving my career again because I didn't love it forever.
Yeah. And I've been through very similar circumstances. And I want to encourage you to say that, and our listeners, if you've been to rehab, that should not be viewed as a spot of shame. That just means you're a warrior. You fought through something and got some help with it. I think that is phenomenal that you have recovered and been on this journey and seem to be doing very well. That is amazing that you took those steps to go to rehab. I saw you kind of glare off a little bit.
Like
And I
a little bit
always,
embarrassing to share that.
well, I always get tickled at that particular, I mean, because that's normal to have that embarrassment for that, because we've shamed rehab and addiction so much. And I think that we shouldn't. I think that it's a disease just like everything else. And I watched personal story time. I watched my mother struggle with it for her whole life and wound up dying from it. And that was a very hard, my biological mother. You may hear me talk about my mom and my mother. My mother's my biological mom. My aunt is who I call mom, who raised us from 2 years old. But I watched her struggle with it my whole life and pick drugs over her kids so many times. And I had so much resentment and hate and hurt from that for the longest. And it took me forever to realize that that's a disease. She was literally suffering, because after having conversations with her, what I realized was she always wanted to stop. She always had the desire to stop. It was just never stronger than the drugs.
Right, or never given the tools
Yeah,
to
or never
make
given
that
the
happen.
tools. And I felt when she died, I felt like I had failed her in some senses. And it took a long time to work on my mental health to realize that maybe I did fail her. And sometimes I have to take responsibility for the things that, as an adult, where I pushed her away because I didn't want her. Yeah, I didn't want her influence anymore. I didn't want her around me, because my whole childhood, all I wanted was a relationship with mom. And I never could get it because of the drugs. So I rebelled against that. And that's something that I had to take responsibility for, but also realized that my response was not invalid in any way. So I say all that to encourage you to say that that is not a shameful spot on your record, to me, at least. And
Thank
to
you.
any of our listeners, if you've been through rehab, that's not a shameful spot on your record. That is something that you should kind of have a rejoicing spirit in, to say that you battled a demon and you won, because that is absolutely a demon. It is a disease. It is something that
Yeah.
is deep in your spirit and soul. And I'm a very spiritual guy, as we say in the South. Once that gets on you, it's hard to get rid of it. And I
Yeah.
really appreciate you sharing that. That is really cool. I really thank you for that honesty and openness.
Yeah, I really do feel like I have pulled myself from the pits of hell to be where I am today. And somebody else is hurting like that too.
But there's something so encouraging from a rise from the ashes kind of story. And that's what you have. I would encourage you to share more about that, because that is certainly a part of what you do. And I think that people can relate to that. I always, it was so, it always perplexed me so much after every call that I would run on an addict of whatever kind, that I was able to sit there and just counsel and be kind and tell them the same things that I just told you. But at the time, I couldn't do it for my mom, because I couldn't find the strength to say those kind of things to her. It's always been very easy, obviously, for me to talk to a perfect stranger. It was not easy for me to talk to somebody who I had deep rooted feelings for and against. And it took me a long time to realize all these things about addiction that I've learned over the past couple years from being on my own mental health journey. And if you care about how that mental health journey started, you can certainly welcome to go back and listen to episode 1, where Kim and I share our stories. But it has been a track for sure. And I see by your emotions and the things that you've said and the honesty you've given to me, you've been on a track too. And I think if
Yes.
we're honest with ourselves, we're all on some path of some kind. Maybe we're not to the mental health point. Maybe we're deep in the throes of addiction. Maybe we're deep in the throes with this transferred grief or PTSD or all the things that we see on a daily basis. But the reality of it is find that outlet for you, whether it's talking to your peers or whether it's seeking professional help or whatever that may be. all those things are totally all right. And I think we've stigmatized them for so long that we've made it this thing that it's just never was meant to be, and that it's just simply not. But I think that in the first responder and healthcare community, what we've done is we put ourselves in kind of a bad spot. I don't know if you saw our recent TikTok video with EMS Avenger. He was talking about that I Love Lucy scene where they're on the conveyor belt and they're just eating the chocolate. But the conveyor belt's too fast for them to actually ever catch up. I think that's where we are in healthcare, that we've gotten to a point that no matter where we go or what kind of fantastic plan we make up to fix what I would consider as a mental health crisis in healthcare and the first responders in our nation, I think that we've reached a point of critical mass. We'll never be able to recover from it fully until we have to have a rise from the ashes story, until we, kind of hit that rock bottom and go, okay, now we got to build it up to something that we want it to be. So, because I think this whole environment that we all work in, whether you're a first responder or a healthcare worker, we are in absolutely a pressure cooker that is waiting to explode. And that's kind of where we are. So one of the things about a pressure cooker, to segue a little bit, is it demands some focus and some attention, and it comes with a unique mental stress. I think all of our jobs kind of relate to each other in that we have to be focused. We have to be on top of our game, and we have to be precise, and we have to be doing everything just right. Every image that even you get is critical for diagnoses, for continuing treatment. And for you guys especially, you really do have a pressure for perfection. I know our doctors, because I've worked in a transfer center before where we were connecting doctors and doctors to talk about x-rays. Man, those doctors can give y'all a lot of grief if it's not just
available
right,
for them to look at,
or if it's not available for them to look at, or if it's not just right, or if it's not the right angle. I've heard some hateful doctors get on the phone with rad techs and say some hateful stuff. Or radiologists. So tell me about how that high pressure for you contributes to your mental health, and how you feel like that may relate to others in the topic of burnout. I think we're very easily to get burned out. So tell me about some of that, if you will.
Yeah, over time in my career, I've done this almost 20 years. The way that we, let's say, image a stroke has evolved over time. So now you're meeting the ambulance in CT, at the place that I was working before this. And you've got to get those images online we have 20 minutes. Get those images to the radiologist so they can diagnose a stroke. We can change the trajectory for that patient. We're a critical part of that team. But I really like that. I was telling you earlier, like, those used to make me so stressed out when they'd say, oh, code stroke's coming in, and I'd get this anxiety inside of me. And finally I just said, I'm trained to do this. I'm just going to take a deep breath and focus on what I need to do right now. And it maybe it just takes 15 years experience, I don't know, to get over that anxiety. And, it is a pressure cooker in CT, and especially in a large trauma hospital. I mean, you're scanning patients every 5-10 minutes. It's just boom, boom, boom. And so we really need to help people remember that what you do for a living isn't your life, right? Like, I feel that way.
That is a good point.
Yes, this is what I do to make money, and I love it, and it's my passion, and I was called to do it. But my life is lived over here with my family and my friends and the things I enjoy doing outside of work. And so I've really had to focus my attention on, like, yep, I get to do this for a living and it's really cool, but that's going to stay there. And I'm going to go here and live my life.
Yeah. So if you've noticed, I'm full of stories. When I got out of paramedic school, I attached myself to being a paramedic. That's all my whole life. I wanted to be a paramedic, I wanted to be a paramedic, I wanted to be a firefighter. I did the firefighting thing, didn't love it as much as I thought I would. So I kind of transitioned over into EMS and did the whole EMS thing for about 18 years on top of the 2 or 3 years I was a firefighter, and absolutely loved it. Well, out of paramedic school, I was just enthralled with being a paramedic. It was my identity. I was not Kevin anymore. I was paramedic Kevin. If I could have had people refer to me as paramedic Kevin in everyday life, I probably would have. Yeah, like a big name badge or a shirt that had it across the chest.
Look at what I do.
Yeah, like it was everything that I ever wanted to do. And through that, and this is a story that could go forever, but I'll condense it down as much as I can. My wife and I were having lots of marital problems during that time because obviously my time was being devoted to, the paramedic thing, and I wanted to work all the overtime. I think the first year I was a paramedic, even starting out at $13 an hour, I made well over $100,000 in a year because I worked all the overtime. So it was a very difficult time. And I can remember one particular time she came to visit me at the station because that's the only place she could visit me because I was always gone. And she came to visit me and she was visibly upset. And I remember saying, "What's wrong?" And she just broke down and she's like, "You love this ambulance more than you love me." And that was like a ton of bricks. And it was almost an immediate change that I was like, okay, taken, because that wasn't the case. I had just made that my identity. So I think it's so important that we separate ourselves from our positions. I'm a
Right.
leader now, I'm a manager. I could walk around with manager across my shirt some days. I feel like because there's so much required from it. And that's not me loving the job. Trust me. I do love the job, but not like I did back then. Because I learned a lot, but sometimes you feel like you're just pulled from. So it's super important for us to separate those titles and our personal life. So I think you made a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. That's just a side story for me, but it goes right along with what we're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. My son-in-law is a law enforcement officer and my sister's a nurse. And so we got a lot of
Well, hopefully
that
they'll
in our
listen to this
family.
episode with you when it comes out.
Yeah. I'm sure they will.
Yeah. Do you think that
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
We were talking about that pressure cooker. I just wanted to say thank you because I watched the first few episodes of this and, how we're going to let the steam off of this is having these conversations.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm not okay and you're not okay. And how are we going to get to be okay
Yeah.
again?
And I think we touched on this in a few different episodes, but I'll touch on it again because I think it's important. I think that we have so normalized saying we're not okay, we're not okay. But like you said, it's also okay for those other people that were in that room with you when you were very affected. It's also okay for them to be okay. Some people are just built differently. And
Right.
it's very important that we realize that. And sometimes we do have more empathetic people on our team, that have to be handled with a little bit more care. I'm one of them. My other leaders sometimes will tell me, "You care too much. You care too much." Their style's just different than mine. They're built different than me. And we have to work together to figure out what the right solution is with both inputs. So I think it's really important that we realize that not everybody's built like you and I. Clearly, you're a very feeling person, and so am I. Man, I could tell you days and days worth of stories of me sitting on the side of the road crying over some wreck patient that my partner was just like, "Are you ever going to get in the truck? Like, I'm ready to go eat." And I was just always that person that felt those big feelings. And I feel like based on what you said, you probably are too, if I had to guess.
For sure.
Yeah. So have you seen anything that is in the way of us getting to we're all okay? Have you seen any barriers to mental health in the healthcare system? I know in the
Well,
past 5 or 6 years it's gotten better, but I don't think we're there yet.
yeah, I definitely don't think we're there yet. And, had one person maybe come to me and said, How are you coping? I feel like I was just like right there wanting someone to just look at me and say, "Are you okay?" And maybe if we just were having these conversations a little bit more with our coworkers or somebody that you could see is struggling, there's signs, right? They're missing work. They're distant. Their anger is at a different level. You can tell when somebody's being affected by their job and maybe just I don't know how we get to a point where we recognize that and help those people, but it's so important that we continue to have these conversations.
And I think that's what we really started this show for. I think that it was because we never started it with the intention of being famous, and we're not probably not ever going to be famous. But I think that we wanted to build a community where it was okay to come on a show like this and to say, "I'm not okay too." It was so during my few times that I can remember that I was like looking back can be like, "Oh, that was definitely signs of PTSD and depression." I didn't have anybody to come alongside me and tell me a story of what happened in their life. I think that is one of the biggest things we can do to connect to people is share our stories with each other. And I think we always felt like from the time of inception in our brains to now, this was going to be a platform where we were just going to share our stories and talk about how people have dealt with their own mental health and things that they have seen and experienced, like your story, watching you tear up, that tells somebody else that it is okay to feel that emotion. It's okay to tear up over a patient. It's okay to have that response. And I think we've lost sight of that response is okay. Whatever your
Right.
response is to that particular trigger is completely fine. And we have to normalize some of that. And I think the healthcare system does a poor job of that overall, accepting kind of all of the emotional range that people can have just as natural humans. We just are built with different emotional ranges. And I think we as a healthcare system as a whole, and first responders as well, police departments, fire departments, we have ignored that emotional range that people can have. And we have missed so many signs. I know that my agency's missed all the signs in me because they weren't paying attention. And I think that one of the goals of this show is to try to give people a platform to say, hey, pay attention to me, pay attention to us, pay attention to our departments and our hospitals and the things that are important to us. Pay attention to the workers that are taking care of the patients. Healthcare so conveniently gets kind of sidetracked off of the workers and the patients to chase money. And that's one of the extremely difficult things being in leadership in healthcare. It's very hard to navigate that road that your health system is naturally going to walk down, because healthcare at the end of the day has to be a business. We have to make money to keep the doors open, to keep providing care for the next patient. I realize that. But it's really hard to kind of navigate that. And I think that we've kind of failed the mental health aspect on all fronts, whether you're a dispatcher, fireman, police officer, dispatcher, EMS person, uh, radiology technologist, healthcare worker in general. I just think we've missed the mark on mental health, and I think that our people are suffering because of it. So the point of this is to give people that platform to expand on some of their suffering and how maybe we failed and how we can do better.
That's great. I'm really excited to be a part of it.
So is there anything that you can look back on your career and say, oh, this is the day that was the hardest thing I had to do, or that was the day that this was so hard that I thought about walking out, that I thought about being done with this? Because I think we all have that moment where, in most of our careers, at least, I know in mine, there's a few moments that I can look back on and go, I almost quit that day. And not because of something a manager did, but because that patient or that scenario, whatever it was, maybe it was a coworker, maybe it was a patient, really got to me in such a way that I just can't mentally and emotionally do this anymore.
So for me, it was in probably October of the 2020, that peak year of COVID, and I was broken. Like, I had already come through my mental health stuff. I'd recovered, and I literally just had such a moral injury from the way that we could not care for patients in a way that I know we were supposed to be doing, but we were so overwhelmed. And I remember a nurse coming into my room and saying, "Boy, you've really changed. Why are you so angry?" And I just thought, something's got to give. I can't keep doing this anymore. I had to walk past the ICU, and we wouldn't allow visitors inside. So where I parked my car, I had to walk past the families that were camped outside in tents
I remember that. Yeah.
to watch their family. And I just would walk past them every day like, "I'm so sorry I get to go in here, and I don't really want to go in here. And you're sitting out here, and your poor family members in there, and you're there all alone." And
That was the
just
hardest
we did
part.
the certain yeah,
That's the
and we did
hardest
certain
part.
things, like in my hospital, we used to have a curtain right in front of the door in the emergency room bay. So you pull the curtain, close the door. Well, they decided that curtains were too much of an infection risk, so they took the curtains away and they frosted the glass. So you couldn't see into a patient's room anymore. And then we wouldn't allow visitors. So there's not one person in there advocating for your 90-year-old grandma who's about to fall out of the bed because nobody can see in there. She's not on the monitor because the nurses are overwhelmed. And I just was like, I told my husband, I said, we have to make a change. Our kids weren't in school. My husband is an emergency room nurse. He was working at a different hospital, and we kind of just changed everything. We sold our home. We moved to the mountains. I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. So,
I couldn't.
what
Like,
part of the country were you in during COVID?
s- so we
You
were
don't have
in
to say
a
exact
larger,
location, but
yeah, yeah, just in a more metro area where I had grown up, and we moved to a rural area where he grew up. So
okay.
now we live in a town of 200 people.
That's fantastic.
I
That
live in
sounds
the
great.
I live in the middle of nowhere and I love
Yeah.
it.
I live in
I
the
didn't
middle
know
of
that
nowhere
these
too, but I live about 45 minutes away from the hospital I work at. So that's the reason. I work in a major metropolitan hospital as well, but the outlying counties have very rural, you know,
Mhm.
people that come and visit my house for dinner or whatever say that they have to pipe sunshine to where I live because they're all from the
Yeah.
metro area. So they're coming to that small town is like a
Mhm.
vacation for them and a track. Like they always
Mhm.
complain about it, but I don't care. I'm not moving.
Right.
Yeah, 2020 was, I think, hard on so many people. It was hard on us because we are purely pediatrics. So we had the COVID from the pediatric side, and that was not as bad as the adult side. I will never take away from anything from the adult hospitals because they had it much worse than we did. We actually, other than the COVID patients, people stopped bringing their kids to the hospital because they were afraid they were going to get sick.
Right. So they weren't getting immunizations, all the
Right.
things.
What happened to us is we had the secondary fallout from that. So you'd have kids that broke their legs and they wouldn't come to the hospital because they were, this is one particular patient I'm thinking about. They compound fracture the femur and they come back 4 days later with this very swollen internal bleeding femur because, of course, they tried to move it around and walk on it and, walk it off, if you will. And it just made matters worse. So we had to deal with infection and all those things that happens when you have that type of injury. But it was numerous that wouldn't bring their kids to the hospital for their usual cough, runny nose, and then you get here and it's full blown RSV,
Sepsis.
pneumonia, sepsis, like down that whole pathway. So that's what we experienced. We did have the COVID unit and our COVID kids, but it wasn't as bad as adult facilities. So I don't think we had it bad in that aspect. I think we had it more in the secondary where parents were not intentionally, they had the best interest at heart, but in reality, they were doing more harm than good. And it wound up causing an influx of patients for us in a pediatric hospital. But I was doing EMS at that time, part-time, and it was really, really a hard time. It was a hard time for, I think, all healthcare. Going out on an ambulance and after every single call, you're deconning your ambulance for an hour because that's how long the wipe stuff had to sit there and all the chemicals that we were using in the back of the ambulance to be effective. So, that was a really, really hard time. And I think a lot of people thought about quitting. I was going to ask you if you took a break or if you moved or what you did, but you answered that for me. I know early on in my career, I had gotten to a point where I was not great and I started to realize that I was not doing well. And so I just quit altogether and went and drove a truck for 6 months, went and drove an 18 wheeler. Why that was my path, I have no idea. My family's full of truck drivers. That's probably why I picked that, but it was something I could get away from EMS. And when I was ready to come back, I just stopped trucking and came back. But it was, yeah, these jobs that we're all in healthcare and in public service in general, and really anything dealing with the public the way that we do on a level of, you're seeing people at their worst day, you're seeing their injuries, you're seeing them most of the time unclothed. I mean, healthcare has very little dignity for the patient. I mean, just because when you're injured, you're injured. We're going to take care of the injury. We, oftentimes forget about the dignity of the patient. But, these jobs are really, for lack of better terminology, they are a real pressure cooker and they will end careers. I have watched it numerous times. And unfortunately, we've seen an influx of suicide in our field. And I think that's because we have failed that mental health care system. We live in this pressure cooker all the time that we're never releasing the pressure from. And as a whole, public service and healthcare have overlooked mental health for entirely too long. So that's just my take on that.
Yeah, it's great to have these conversations. We have to get away from the stigma of like, well, you're not strong enough to cope with this. And it's like, no, I'm just built different. And that's okay. I still am great at what I do. I hold things a little differently than you do, and that's okay.
And I've got one person that comes to mind that early on in my career, she would go on a call, and she was the kind that was chronically broke. I mean, broke. And it was by her own
Mm.
doing, because she would go out and she would see these families, and it's admirable, but she would see these families in need, and she would just give. She would just give. Anytime there was a bad patient, she was just completely broken over this patient and their experience in life, and this and that. You know, being in EMS and being in fire and being in healthcare, you have to be somewhat tough. And I feel very badly looking back at the way that I handled that situation, because I was so rough on that girl. I was just awful to her because she was just built differently than I was. And I am a feeler, but she was way higher than me on the feeling spectrum. And now it's a funny turnabout. She actually works for me now here, and she's fantastic at her job. She's another one of our leaders in our, in our organization, and she's just fantastic. She is just fantastic. And I think the reason she's fantastic is because she has focused on her mental health, and she cares so much about others that's always been kind of at the forefront of the way she deals with situations. And I think people that are feelers, we do have a better way of presenting information that makes people recognize, okay, it's okay for me to not be okay, if you will. It's okay for me to feel like I feel and sit with my emotions for a little bit. I think it's a good quality to have. I don't think it's a bad one. And I used to think it was a bad one. I used to wish with all my might I could make my feelings go away. I was like, if I could just be tougher, if I could just be tougher. I just wanted to have that thick skin that everybody else had. I felt like I was, like you said, I was the odd man out for feeling the way that I felt. And it took a long time to get past that feeling.
There's something to be said about being that feeling person because the lives that we've impacted are different than what somebody else has. Just because of our ability to be empathetic. I mean, I know there's lots of great people that don't carry that empathy like we do, and they're still great at what they do and interact with patients. But I do feel like I've had some real special interactions with patients just because of the way I was built.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here. I would have to agree with that statement for sure. So despite all these pressures we've talked about, and despite this pressure cooker, and despite the failure of the system when you talk about mental health, how do you find the strength to continue to show up? And not only now are you showing up, you're connecting with people through social media, and you're exposing your world, and you're exposing your feelings. How do you cultivate that resilience and protect your own well-being to be able to do what you do every day and to still maintain some type of inner peace?
Well, I definitely had to turn my life upside down right after COVID. I have a really unique work schedule where I have the best work-life balance because I work 1 week on and then I have 2 weeks off.
Yeah, that
So
is nice. Yeah.
nobody else in healthcare gets that kind of work schedule and still makes a full annual salary. So I have a pretty good situation to allow me to blow off that pressure
Yeah.
cooker. And, I still love what I do. I still love connecting with patients. And I think it's important to kind of highlight, like, yeah, it's going to be emotional, it's going to be technical. And if you want to learn something new about it, I'm happy to show you.
Yeah. And I think that's the part we failed at. And EMS Avenger kind of alluded to this, especially in EMS. We've kind of trained our providers that they're going to go out and do something heroic every day. And we're just not. The realism of it is we are an entry point to healthcare, and you guys are kind of that middle flow ground, getting the diagnostics to give to the doctor to continue the treatment. And I think it's important that we share that truth and share that we are going to see some bad stuff, and we are going to have some poor interactions with people. I'm sure you've had your fair share over your career, whether it be family or patients themselves being hateful and ugly. I think we have this Candyland reality that we build in our heads that everything's going to be great, and not always, not always. And we've talked about a lot of those challenges. Is there anything that you do specifically to maintain your own inner peace? Maybe some hobby you have or something that you enjoy doing that kind of releases some of that pressure?
Yeah, well, I am actually turning 50 this year, so I made a list of 50 things that I wanted to try or accomplish before I turned 50. And so I've been working towards that. One of them is a cut flower garden. I just picked those
Oh, they're
today.
beautiful.
I
I thought they were fake.
Thanks, yeah. No, I just made
I
I
thought
just
that they're so
picked
pretty. They
those.
could be like the fake flowers you get at the they're really pretty.
Thank you. Yeah, I do.
And you grew those?
I just have a I did, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so just having hobbies, things that I look forward to outside of work. I always feel like it's important to have something on the calendar to look forward to in the future.
Yeah.
That's something that really helped with my mental health. And yeah, just try to evolve as a person, be the best version of myself. And now that I am getting to that point, I feel like I can share things about my life with people because you couldn't do that when you were in the depths of
Right.
PTSD
Right.
or
You
depression.
cannot. You cannot. That's very, very difficult. I think that one of the things that you mentioned that I kind of gravitate toward is having something on your calendar that you look forward to, whether it's a trip. For Kim and I, this has morphed into a let's help people to let's also help us, because this has become so I don't know if liberating's the right word, but that's kind of how it feels. You feel like you're talking to a lot of people at once and telling people how you feel and some of your opinions on things, and it has really become just as much a process that we look forward to every week as it has for the listeners looking forward to it. I really enjoy doing this. I think that comes through with what we talk about and the expressions that we have. This is fun for us. This is a lot of fun. This is a hobby for us. This is our hobby.
That's great.
So it has been a lot of fun. So I really love what you're doing. I really love that you're helping us break the stigma. I really love that you and your position is also, or your position in general, is helping break that stigma. You've talked about some circumstances where it might not have been the greatest for you and the way you handled it. You've been open and honest with us, and I appreciate that. So tell us what's next for you. Are you going to continue making videos? Is there a next step, or is this just
Yeah.
kind of the hobby that you enjoy as well?
Yeah, it is part of my hobby, and if it ever comes to a point where it's not fun anymore, I just won't do it. I don't have that much I don't feel that much pressure about continuing with it. I love it. I like educating people. I whenever I have an idea for a video, I just jot it down in a little notepad in my phone, and so I have a list of things that I can make content about in the future. And I do try to stack all my content filming together so that it's not overwhelming, right? I'm not doing it every day.
Yeah, same for our content as well. What I'll do is go into,
Mhm.
we use this Riverside app, which is fantastic if you ever think about starting a podcast, whoever's listening. Riverside is absolutely phenomenal. I love them. We're not sponsored. I'm not trying to get a sponsorship. I just love their product. But they give us magic clips where we can edit. It automatically draws out the most beneficial things in your session that you had with a guest, and then it creates this little magic clip that can be a minute to 2 minute long, 2 minutes long. And you can go in and edit it however you want, change the audio. You can animate it if you want. So I'll take a day, an afternoon after work, and just do 5 or 6 of those. And that's my content to share for the week. So I completely understand the batch uploading thing, or the
Yeah.
batch creation, not
Yeah.
uploading, but batch
Yeah, I
creation.
don't want to put too much pressure on myself to
Right.
make it. It's just been something. It was one of those things on my list. I said, I want to try and get TikTok famous before I turn 50. Here
Here
I
you
am.
are.
41,000
Yeah.
41,000 followers or something. It's
I would
weird.
say
It's
that's,
a little bit of imposter
yeah.
syndrome, but it's been fun.
Hey, so I'm not TikTok famous, and I still struggle with imposter syndrome with our 600 or 700 followers. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me, because I'm always open, and you can ask the people around me. My life's an open book, and I'm always kind of boisterous and loud, and just that's my personality. I'm a big personality to be in the room with. And I've been told that, and I've been told I'm not everybody's cup of tea, which is okay. After that first initial person told me I wasn't everybody's cup of tea, it took me about a week to recover from that, because my feelings were hurt. I'm like, well, I like me, and other people like me. Like, what's the problem? Everybody should like me. And I realized that that was really not reality. Some people are just generally not going to like you, and that's okay. Catherine, thank you. Thank you for your list of 50 before 50, because without it, we wouldn't
Thanks.
have your TikTok to watch. And we
Yeah,
love all
thank
your
you.
stuff, and we love what you're doing. I think we've had a really good conversation. I think it's been insightful and impactful. I think it will make a difference. I hope to definitely have you on the show in the future when we start getting into particular topics. And I really think that you are going some big places. I don't think even you realize it yet. 40,000 is just the
Thank
tip
you.
of the iceberg for you, because it has really been a
Thank
great
you.
conversation, and you seem like a very genuine, kind person, and we appreciate you being here with us.
Well, and I just want to say, likewise, I listened to your first episode. I sent it to my son-in-law who's in law enforcement, and I really think these conversations are going to take off. People need to be having these conversations. So I thank you for what you're doing too.
Well, we hope so. And like I said, it's not for fame. We don't care about being famous. We care about providing a platform for people to express themselves and talk about some of the harder things that we've dealt with in all these careers that are so difficult at their core. All right. Well, you can tell us your TikTok handle so we make sure we get it right.
Oh, gosh, I think it's Rad Tech Catherine.
That's right.
I don't even know for
I
sure.
had it wrote down, so I was just going to make you say it in case I had it wrote down wrong. Are you anywhere else other than TikTok? Because I just found you on TikTok. I didn't search for you anywhere else. I just have been glued to your TikTok videos.
I haven't really tried putting it out there. I know I could just put it out to everywhere, and maybe I'll do that in the future. We'll see. But just sticking with TikTok for right now. It's been fun.
We appreciate what you're doing. We appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks.
This is the end of the show. And as always, you can find A Silent War Within at our new website, asilentwarwithin.com. It's live. It's active. We have an email list you can join if you care about getting some weekly updates from us. That's always fun to release those things about what we're doing in our personal lives and the guests that are coming up. We have really had a good time putting those out. There's some comedy thrown in there from time to time that you'll enjoy. We all have kind of a darker sense of humor from time to time, and sometimes you get some of those little snippets as well. Kim is the queen of dark humor for sure. She's really good at it. I hate that she couldn't join us today. She would have loved you. She really would have enjoyed seeing you. But you can find us in all the normal places, the Instagram, the Facebook, the TikTok. YouTube is where you can watch our video version of the episodes. And of course, we're on all the podcast streaming platforms that I mentioned earlier. Most of the ones that you're going to go to, we're there. Just search The Silent War Within and we'll come right up. Trust me, I've tested on every site to make sure that we're really there because I couldn't believe it. And maybe at least 10 of the streams may have been from me. I'm not going to lie, but I'll take that. We're real proud of what we're putting out, and we want to put out a really good program. Again, thank you for joining us. As always,
thanks for having me.
Be safe, take care of your mind, and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to A Silent War Within. If this episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you're not alone and your well-being matters. It's time to end this silent war.